interact with our country. Due to the open character of the Cuban economy, our country requires foreign trade. It has always needed it. And for 60 years, we have learned to expand and to diversify our trade, knowing that the biggest market in the U.S. is the biggest market in the world is banned for us. That has given us a long experience as to interacting with markets, including faraway ones, and we have been able to incorporate their standards and their technologies and products to the Cuban economy. It has given us experience to export to those markets in various parts of the world and has allowed us to attract foreign investment too. Even with the big limitations imposed by the U.S., but they do not make foreign investment impossible in Cuba. The data that I hope are disseminated in this forum show that at least 300 companies have invested capitals in Cuba, and they do it, and they are doing it under the international law, under Cuban laws, and of course under the laws of their own countries. Through the Helms-Burton law, the U.S. government has tried illegitimately to cow and scare off foreign investors. And you have to imagine that this U.S. effort has been somewhat successful. We will never be able to estimate or calculate how many investors considered that there was productivity and that the Cuban market was attractive and decided nevertheless to forget about investing in Cuba due to fear of U.S. reprisals as a result of the blockade or as a result specifically of the Helms-Burton law. No doubt, however, some have not felt threatened and have taken the right of investing in Cuba. In Cuba, we have legislations that reject the Helms-Burton Act and also commit the Cuban government with protecting and helping, in the face of the U.S. laws, investors who decide to interact and trade with Cuba and invest in it. So by U.S. law, the only ones excluded from investing in Cuba and interacting with our economy are U.S. investors or companies and citizens subordinated to U.S. laws, unless they have a specific license from that government, and there are exceptional cases as to that, to invest in Cuba. The ban is applied by the U.S. government. It is there where citizens and businessmen are deprived of their right to invest in Cuba and explore business opportunities in our country. Finally, I'd like to say that in spite of the impact, the indisputably overwhelming impact of the economic blockade, in spite of the unquestionable impact on the living standards of the Cuban population, our development, and the aspirations of welfare and development of several generations of Cubans, the Cuban economy is viable, even under the impact of the blockade. Our country has the capacity to develop with limitations. It had the capacity to continue its economic development and to prosper. If there were no blockade, the potential would be undisputably greater. And even if there are only exceptions, if there were only a reduction of the blockade in a limited way, the potential for Cuba would be greater. That has been shown, and if there is any doubt about it, just invite the U.S. government to test that idea once again. Thank you very much.
We thank you for your intervention. We have received some questions. One of them is, as a European citizen, I invest in Cuba. What type of international sanctions could be applied against me? as a European citizen, as an Asian citizen, as a Latin American, African, or American citizen, there is no legislation, there is no international uh, regulation that could be applied to any investor in our country. Those who are subject to penalties are American citizens or citizens from any country subordinated to the jurisdiction of the United States because they live in the US or they are registered there. But in the case of any citizen from any part of the world, they will have full rights to trade with Cuba and invest in Cuba without being threatened by any sanction or any penalty. Based on your presentation and your explanations, Cuba disregards the possibility of doing business with the U.S. Well, today, the U.S. legislation, the U.S. regulations prevent us from doing so. So, unless there is any American business people receiving a license from that government, it would be very difficult for them to trade with our country. But by a Cuban decision, we do not disregard that possibility. We expect that someday that would be possible. We believe this uh, is a right of the U.S. citizen to trade with Cuba as they do with the rest of the world, as much as any citizen from any country in the world are able to trade with the U.S. or Cuba. But American citizens have certain limitations to trade with Cuba right now. Therefore, today, this is not viable as a result of the legislation of that country, but we do not disregard that possibility because of two reasons. I mean, they can either apply for a license. This is an exceptional case, but it is not possible. Or because any given day, American citizens demand from their government their right to be able to trade with Cuba freely and interact with Cuba without any interference of the U.S. government and without the interference of the very limited political interest in that country intended to punish Cuba by preventing U.S. citizens from trading with our country. Thank you very much for your answers and your update on the impact of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade of the U.S. against investments and foreign trade in Cuba. We are going on a break, but afterwards we will have a panel on the business opportunities for Cubans residing abroad to invest in Cuba.
diferentes está trabajando en desarrollar estos productos que van a resolver un problema de primerísimo orden, que es la salud. El bloqueo afecta al emprendimiento privado en Cuba de la misma manera que afecta a la empresa estatal. En la industria del software privado, por ejemplo, sobran las herramientas informáticas, los recursos online que están en la nube, que no son accesibles para un desarrollador cubano, siempre y cuando esté sentado en la geografía de esta isla. Por ahí hay un primer ejemplo. El otro tiene que ver con el acceso a mecanismos financieros, acceso a cuentas bancarias en el extranjero, que emprendedores de otro lugar del mundo pueden tener y que a los cubanos le están vedados. Bloqueo. Bloqueo porque jode, porque afecta, porque daña, porque impide, porque corta. No hay manera de decirle embargo, porque aquí no se ha embargado nada. Aquí hay una política incluso que tiene cortes extraterritoriales, donde van todos juntos, va el gobierno, va el sector privado, pagan los gobiernos de otros países por mantener relaciones, pagan los bancos, paga todo el mundo. Entonces es difícil decir que esto es un embargo y es difícil asumir que es una cuestión bilateral. Es un bloqueo, es un problema multilateral, es una política dañina, es un crimen.
Mi nombre es Carlos Miguel Pérez Rey y soy el fundador de Dofleni Software, un proyecto del sector no estatal para el desarrollo de software y la informatización de la sociedad cubana. El deseo más grande que tienen las empresas como la nuestra es desarrollar productos que puedan ser usados por millones de personas. Esta tendencia, que es producto como servicio, generalmente se hospedan en servidores norteamericanos como Amazon o Google, y acceder a un mercado como un mercado internacional, no solo el nacional, como software como servicio. Las relaciones con Estados Unidos y Cuba sin duda nos abriría un mercado muy amplio en la posibilidad real de nuestros productos puedan insertarse en el mercado internacional, poder acceder a estos servidores para alojar nuestras soluciones y además poder utilizar las pasarelas de pago internacional, que son las que permiten a nuestros clientes poder pagar esos servicios. Para aquellos que piensan de que el bloqueo no existe, o para aquellos que piensan que el bloqueo solo afecta a las instituciones estatales, nuestra empresa es un ejemplo de que no es cierto. Dofleni, como empresa privada, fue la primera forma de gestión no estatal en exportar software en el país. Nosotros exportamos nuestros servicios a empresas, sobre todo europeas. No hemos podido hacer esta exportación al mercado latinoamericano o al mercado norteamericano, precisamente por las presiones del bloqueo en cuanto a que los bancos de estos países no pueden hacer transferencias a Cuba. El bloqueo también es un virus.
Grady Mesa Jiménez es una paciente de 12 años con un diagnóstico de un osteosarcoma convencional osteoblástico que llegó a nuestro centro en enero del 2020 presentando dolor en miembro inferior izquierdo. Comienza tratamiento con quimioterapia. Posteriormente es evaluada por el Servicio de Tumores Periféricos y en el 20 de julio del 2020 se decide tratamiento quirúrgico, una cirugía conservadora para posteriormente el uso de una prótesis. Desde ese momento nuestra paciente está en espera de la prótesis que impide la realización de su vida diaria, puesto que la paciente está encamada. En este caso la prótesis que nuestra paciente necesitaría se fabrica en los Estados Unidos y por las razones obvias del bloqueo nuestro país se ve imposibilitado de adquirir estas prótesis para niños como Grady.
Cada vez es más difícil que haya un desarrollo tecnológico en ninguna parte del mundo, en ningún país del mundo que sea 100% autóctono, es decir, 100% autosostenible, ¿no? Hacemos fermentaciones, aquí se inventó el producto, se clonó un gen, el producto es bueno, se ensayó, pero el producto hay que fabricarlo. Y para fabricarlo tiene que traer un reactivo de aquí, una pieza de repuesto de allá, y todo eso está sometido a las leyes del bloqueo. Pero además hay que hacer transacciones económicas, ¿no? Y ahí está la presión de los Estados Unidos sobre los bancos, Muchas veces teniendo el dinero en la mano no lo puedes adquirir, porque el banco se niega a hacer la transacción bancaria, precisamente porque ha habido otros bancos que han recibido sanciones millonarias por hacer transacción con Cuba. Toda esa es la persecución de un país de 300 millones de habitantes sobre un país de 11.
And democracy comes to the island.
Does not help the Cuban people.
Yo vine en el año 92 como estudiante de ciencia política, recién graduado en Canadá, y yo quería conocer a Cuba. Me enamoré del emprendimiento natural que tiene el cubano. Yo me inicié como emprendedor en Cuba en el año 2014. La idea mía fue hacer un restaurante que reproducía todas las imágenes, el ambiente de la Unión Soviética. Yo descubrí el impacto del bloqueo americano muy temprano en mi estancia en Cuba. Las escaseces, la falta de materiales, de insumos. El bloqueo obviamente tiene impacto en lo que entra a Cuba, y no solo de Estados Unidos, sino de otros países. Yo soy canadiense y yo sé la cantidad de productos que no entran por Canadá o por Europa a causa del bloqueo. Bloquear un pueblo para lograr un cambio, para mí no es moral. Deje que el pueblo, que el gobierno, que los cubanos entre ellos se arreglen, pero utilizar un palo económico para exigir que un país cambie, no creo que es sostenible moralmente ni éticamente. Ojalá que los emprendedores cubanos también comiencen a explorar otros espacios, pero que los cubanos utilicen esa educación tan buena que tiene para ser emprendedores en cada día más sectores de la economía. Vamos a comenzar con eso, y creo que si uno se siente bien cubano, como yo que nací en Canadá pero me siento cubano, uno siempre quiere ser un aporte a esta isla.
And now we resume our broadcasting of this second business forum, Cuba 2021, and we will have the next panel on investments and business by Cubans residing abroad. These would be conducted by the first Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade and Foreign Investments, Ana Teresita González Fraga, as well as some executives from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Foreign Trade. Good morning to all. Greetings to all Cubans following us this morning from different parts of the world. It is a pleasure for us to be able to hold this panel aimed at business and foreign investments by Cubans residing abroad. Also with me, Ernesto Soberón Guzmán, General Director of Consular Affairs of Cubans residing abroad of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Comrade Carlos Ruiz Jorge Méndez, Director for Foreign Investment at the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Foreign Investments. Why have we organized a special panel to deal with the business and investment possibilities for Cubans residing abroad? We are pleased to say that most of the Cubans residing abroad have very close links with their relatives and their home country. There is an increasing number of Cubans residing abroad showing interest and wishing to have business relations and trade with our country. We also want to have greater knowledge about the transformations that are going on in our country, precisely to promote the economic and social development of Cuba. On Monday, November 29th last, during the opening of this second business forum, Cuba 2021, the Deputy Minister and Minister of Economy, Alejandro Gil, made a presentation about the transformations taking place recently, and he explained which have been these transformations all about, which are intended to promote our economic and social development. He said that this had been a grade of great limitations, but also of great transformations. The limitations resulting from the presence of the pandemic because of the struggle against the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the U.S. against Cuba, and also due to the damages caused by climate change, namely drought and tropical storms. Among others, we have organized this panel because there is a political willingness to promote the participation of Cubans residing abroad in businesses and investments in our country. Among the priorities established in our economic and social development plan by the year 2030, this is also a part of our strategy. This is a reflection of the willingness of the Cuban government expressed many a time by our President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, which has been part of the working agenda of our president in his visit to several countries. He has always met with Cubans residing abroad, know their concerns, suggestions, and discuss the way in which they could support and be part of these economic and social transformations. This willingness is very much in tune with our policy to have a greater rapprochement between our nation and its emigres. And we reaffirm that this is a continued and irreversible process which started by all the arrangements made by our Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro in the dialogue held in 1978. Cubans residing abroad can be part of our trade and foreign investments. The Cuban regulatory framework does not impose any limit to the participation of Cubans residing abroad in the foreign trade activities, as long as, and it is very clear to establish this, as long as they have a juridical personality of their own. I mean, they are not supposed to engage in these as natural persons. They can participate in different forms, either as providers of goods and services to Cuban entities through direct purchases or any other modality, such as the consignment contracts in our country. They could also engage in leasing operations for small equipments or small industries, and they could also participate as clients of the Cuban exports, thus contributing to their increase in the international market, or contributing to place our products in new markets, or by acquiring greater knowledge about the markets available to Cubans residing abroad. Cubans residing abroad can also participate in foreign investments, as has been said by other colleagues during their presentations in this forum. Foreign investment is an important component in the economic development of the country. It is referred to by all the main documents of our economic and social development. Foreign investment is today a priority for Cuba, a major source of revenues required by our economic development. The legislation in force establishes that all investors enjoy the same benefits and guarantees established by the law. Foreign investors are not discriminated against by by their origin. They are defined as juridical persons with domicile abroad and with foreign capital. All Cubans residing abroad are entitled to engage in foreign investments in Cuba as long as they have their domicile and capital established abroad. What does it mean? This is applicable to any Cubans residing abroad, even if they have another citizenship. For Cubans, Cubans will always continue to be Cubans. This is also applicable for repatriated Cubans having companies established abroad. And this is also applicable for Cubans living abroad and live in Cuba, but who have not lost their residence in Cuba. Of course, they should also have a company established abroad. Cubans residing abroad are entitled to participate in foreign investments in Cuba in every priority sector. We should add that one of the most important changes as a result of the transformations that are going on in our country is to grant greater autonomy to our municipalities, so that municipalities may design projects that would promote economic development in the territories. So we identified a big potential for the territorial participation of our communities through local projects, and we have realized that this could happen to be very attractive for Cubans residing abroad. They are now able to invest in local development in their home communities, in the places where they still have links with relatives and friends. This could be a major attraction for Cubans residing abroad, as well as an additional motivation. What do we pursue through foreign investments? This should promote economic development in our country. It is not enough to have the willingness to invest. This should be very much in tune with the sectors where Cuba sees foreign investments are a priority. This has been established such in our economic development plan by the year 2030. Foreign investments should be capable of generating revenues to ensure financial sustainability. They should be aimed at exporting and to effectively replace imports, and they should help us to access new sources of financing and technologies. These are general principles followed in foreign investments in Cuba. What do we offer to those interested in investing in our country? Yesterday, our Minister of Foreign Trade and Foreign Investments presented the new portfolio of opportunities. We updated the general principles as well as the sectorial principles governing foreign investments. We must say that as from the year 2020, we updated almost all the sectorial policies governing foreign investments in accordance with the transformations that have been taking place in the country recently. This time, one of the major changes in the sectorial policies as well as the general policy governing foreign investments is the linkage between foreign capital with the non-state production forms. What does it mean? The mini and small and medium enterprises, the new economic actors in Cuba, can be associated to foreign capital as long as this is done in the sectors that have been identified as sectors of interest for the economic and social development of Cuba. This new business portfolio, has as many as 678 businesses for a total amount of $213 million approximately. We have projects in every province as well as in the special municipality of the Isle of Youth. Opportunities have been conceived in accordance with the investment amounts. This means that this portfolio includes projects for a lesser amount of investment funds to facilitate investments from Cubans residing abroad and other investors with whose financial amounts for investments are not so high. There is one peculiarity. This portfolio reflects the needs of all municipalities of the country, since it has been designed taking into account the needs of all territories. This is a more flexible portfolio, a portfolio that would be systematically updated to the extent that there are projects that start to be under negotiation. We will remove some and we will add new ones. And one important element that could be of the interest to Cubans residing abroad is that this portfolio of opportunities is not a straitjacket. That is, there might be other interests coming up, other projects coming up among Cubans residing abroad, which are not contained currently in the portfolio, but could be of the interest of the economic development of the country, and they would also be negotiated. We have conceived important projects in priority sectors. What sectors? Food production, considered to be the top priority today to ensure food security in our country. So is the case for the development of the renewable sources of energy. Here we have said that in our economic and social development program by the year 2030, we have included the transformation of the energy matrix of our country to include greater participation of the renewable sources of energy. We hope to achieve more than 24% of power generation based on renewable sources by the year 2030. Another project for priority sectors is tourism. As you know, this is the main source of revenues for our country. So is the case for the development of industries aimed at export activities and the introduction of innovation and new technologies. We have wanted to refer to examples of small investment funds related to local development at the level of municipality. For example, the farming and marketing of shrimps and lobsters, the production of foam mattresses, including the modernization of that industry. This is a project, $80,000 worth. There is a small investment for the intelligent platform to manage sustainable development projects. This is about the development of a software ecosystem oriented to the development of solutions and services for sustainable development, which is worth $150,000, and the development of the production of goat milk, $200,000 worth. The portfolio of projects include projects for a much lesser amount of money. For example, with less than $500,000, we have 29 projects. We have 19 projects of up to 1 million. From 1 million to 3 million, we have 77 projects. From 3 million to 5 million, we have 35 projects. And afterwards, we have much greater projects. We have to state very clearly that we continue to bet on big investment projects because this is what the country needs. These are the projects that really allow for an inflow, a major inflow of capital. But this time, I repeat, we have also conceived these smaller projects allowing for Cubans residing abroad and other foreign investments to invest with a lesser amount of capital here in our country. We invite all of you to access the portfolio of opportunities to our electronic address www.inviertaencuba.minsex.gov.cu. Law 118 for foreign investments also include the modalities whereby you can engage in investments in Cuba. Projects can be carried out according to the modalities of joint venture, fully foreign capital investments, or contracts of economic association. This has been very clearly stated in Law 118 for foreign investments. We would like to draw your attention to the fact that in the case of the international association, contracts are much simpler and flexible structures in terms of the contributions to be made by the parties. The national and international investors union is the one that governs in these modalities without the interference of any state companies. In the case of the joint ventures, we do require new juridical persons different from the parties. And in the case of the fully foreign capital businesses, this would be a marketing entity with foreign capital without the participation of any national investor. We also have the implementation of the one-stop shop for foreign investments. This is an indirect incentive to foreign investments. This is really a mechanism that has been created under the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Foreign Investments to offer a service whereby all the procedures, permits, licenses, and authorizations will become more expeditious. This is provided free of charge. This is to support national and foreign investors throughout the entire process of the business. It is oriented to facilitate all the arrangements linked to foreign investment. It is supported by an online platform allowing for procedures to be made online. It is interconnected with all the municipalities of the country, including the special municipality of Isle of Youth, and it has access to foreign connections. The physical headquarters was inaugurated last year. There we can receive all persons interested in investing in our country. The address of the one-stop shop for investments, the electronic address is www.vuinex.minsex.gov.cu. When it comes to foreign investments, we apply all benefits granted under the legislation in force. We are speaking about a special tax system. We are saying that we offer legal protection to all investors, and we guarantee all rights to foreign investors. We recommend to study Law 118 for foreign investments, and likewise the opportunities for portfolio, which clearly define all the principles and general and sectorial policies governing foreign investments, as well as the 178 projects included after the last update. I would like to conclude by saying that Cuba ratifies that it is open to investments by all Cubans residing abroad for them to participate in the economic development of the country. We ratify the express willingness of our government in this endeavor. We welcome the participation of Cubans residing abroad in all the key foreign investment projects to promote our economic and social development, and we welcome all Cubans residing abroad willing to travel to the island to explore possibilities for businesses and investments in our country. We will continue to make our efforts. Our government has called on us to remove all obstacles to facilitate foreign investments to avoid unnecessary delays, and we are working to create the best conditions so that these business and foreign investment operations could be as expeditious as required. Today, I have the pleasure to announce in this business forum that we have established email address entitled negocios@minsex.gov.cu to respond to any concern or doubt or interest conveyed by Cubans residing abroad who might be willing to engage in businesses or foreign investments in our country. Thanks very much to everyone for your attention. We hope that this could be a useful information and that Cubans residing abroad could play an ever more positive and important role in the economic development of our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister, for your intervention. You're a Cuban living abroad. You have the opportunity of doing business with Cuba, investing in Cuba, doing business with your country. Now we will continue with a panel for the morning to continue discussing these topics. Questions and answers. We have some questions we have been sent One of them is this. How do new business and investment opportunities influence on Cubans and their links with their country of origin? Good morning again to Cubans residing abroad, and especially those connected with us in this forum. The possible participation of Cubans residing abroad in development projects in Cuba no doubt would contribute to strengthening and diversifying relations with our nationals. Also, this possible participation in investment and business projects would be the most novelty and promising element of our policies to have relations with Cubans living abroad. As stated before, that began with the 1978 dialogue by Fidel, and that is continued and irreversible. Also, the updating of the Cuban economic model with its new actors and the updating of our migration policies and the development of new ICTs and the growing interest among Cubans living abroad to participate in development processes in Cuba do bring about the necessary conditions for specific investment and business projects in Cuba with our nationals living abroad. Fourth, as stated before, local development projects that are particularly present in our investment portfolio would strengthen that natural relationship between the persons, in this case Cuban living abroad, and their areas of origin, their traditions and their ways. Fifth, there are not only opportunities for Cubans residing abroad, but also for their descendants. If they are interested in having links apart from family links, they also have the opportunity to participate in these projects. To conclude, we believe the conditions are ripe for Cubans living abroad, many of whom got education in Cuba and became professionals in Cuba, can become the engines for new investment and business projects that are of interest for the country, and they would benefit as would their families and friends in Cuba. I think this would be the main ideas behind the intention to have our nationals living abroad participating in our economy. Another question, a Cuban residing in another country with a citizenship in that country and in Cuba could have investments in Cuba according to the portfolio of business opportunities that you are offering. I would like to include this item in this forum. I think it is a great initiative and a great opportunity to reach out to these fellow Cubans who are not living permanently in Cuba, but they have a relationship with our country. And I would say that includes not only those with an interest in carrying out businesses in Cuba or are interested in doing so, but also Cubans living abroad with an interest in the development of the nation and in contributing to Cuba and its economic and social development. I hope this is not just the first opportunity that there are new spaces in presence or over network contacts with Cubans residing abroad who want to make a contribution to the development of the country. As to the question specifically, I would like to give you a description of what the foreign investment being like in Cuba early this year. That's been a difficult time because of the international situation with COVID-19. These 2 years have been very complex as to attracting foreign investment. Also, there's been an unprecedented tightening of the U.S. blockade. Under these conditions, it's difficult to travel. It is difficult to carry out a foreign investment project if you cannot go to the spot and so on. Anyway, some operations have been approved, and the figures were given yesterday by the minister when launching the portfolio for new opportunities. But actually, it's been a year of reduction in the approval of new operations that had been taking place since 2014, when the new foreign investment law was passed. That was preceded by the approval of new policies of foreign capital in 2013. But we have continued working. We haven't waited for conditions to improve. It's also been a year where we have introduced many changes in the attraction of foreign investments last year and this year, not only as to amendments and changes in the policies, but also everything having to do with making procedures simpler and facilitating processes. There are hurdles. We hear usually of protracted negotiation processes, and we have focused much on that. The single shop method is just one of the actions that have been carried out, perhaps the clearest one, the most visible one, but much work has been done to coordinate and get people trained and see from a different approach our function as public agencies to help those possible foreign investors. There have also been changes in sectoral policies and the general policies toward foreign capital. In practical all sectors, we have specific decisions to expand on the possibility of foreign investment. Some elements were given yesterday. They are new. They have to do with the new changes of the refining and the methods of the new foreign economic players, as the possibility of having small and medium-sized businesses. That includes the general policies for foreign investments that admits the possibility that foreign capital flows also contribute to the development of new economic actors by having international economic partnerships through International Economic Association contracts or partnerships. Now, as to the possibilities for Cubans residing abroad to do business in Cuba, or who are here in Cuba, or are spending part of their time in Cuba, as explained, the foreign investment law is clear as to what a foreign investor is like. It must be a person or legal person domiciled abroad with a capital there. If that requirement is met, then he is a foreign investor under the law. You cannot have in foreign investment without foreign investor, and sometimes there is confusion about this. And concept may mix. You may have a foreign investor who meets that requirement, and he will be able to invest. Cubans who meet that requirement because they're living abroad or have a company abroad. Perhaps they don't own the whole company, but they are part of a company operating abroad, and they can mobilize capital in Cuba, for Cuba. Then you will have the possibility of being defined a foreign investor on the law 118. That's not the only that's the only requirement for Cuba to approve. For Cuba to approve an investment, there is a 118, which is a complementary framework. There are also sectoral and general policies on how and why you should have a new foreign investment modality. And there is a key term that has been recognized internationally by international agencies concerning the way Cuba sees foreign investment. It must be quality investment. It is not just bringing any investor. It is not that anybody having an interest will be regarded as a foreign investor. Cuba admits a foreign investment, and by that it is acquiring and making commitments and accepting obligations under the Cuban law as to guarantees for those investments, and reserves itself the possibility of approving them if they do contribute to the country's development. That is, that they meet the goals on the law 118 and that are identified according to the purposes for foreign capital, general principles, and sectoral principles. If those requirements are met, we are very ready to analyze any proposal from anywhere in the world, and specifically, as we said, we are very interested in having that because political decision and economic need. That is, that the Cubans residing abroad who have a possibility to carry out business in Cuba will be received, and we will help them with their operations. You refer to Cubans working in foreign companies abroad. So a Cuban may be a representative in Cuba of a foreign company? Yes. I'm very glad that this question is asked because it is something that I obviated during my presentation. I think it is it's more to say clear that that's the case. The 1996 decree was amended, including the term of foreign investor or representative. Now it says just representative, meaning that Cubans can also be such representatives of foreign companies to Cuba. Cubans residing abroad and even in Cuba may represent a foreign company operating in Cuba. They can be so in two ways, through a representation office or through the opening of a branch, and that will depend on the complexity of operation to be carried out in Cuba. And also, we already have a Cuban residing abroad who is the representative of a branch in Cuba under Decree 32 of 2021. Thank you very much. One last question. What legal protection and protections for Cuban residents are like? I refer to the guarantees given by the Cuban state to foreign investments. They are well defined in Law 118. There is a chapter of guarantees. Part of that legal safety and security are the guarantees in the law. I will refer, for example, the possibility of repatriating dividends and profits. Also, the business will not be expropriated except for public utility reasons, or as defined in the law and the Constitution. All the guarantees related to the possibility of selling the shares in Cuba after the approval of the agency of the Cuban government that approved their investments. Another guarantee has to do with the fact that there is a special taxation regime for foreign investments. It is better for those who are in the special Mariel special development zone, but all in all, for all foreign investors, there is a special taxation system that is seen as a guarantee in our laws. The other guarantees in the rules, I would like just to mention a few ones to answer the question. When you see Cuba as a place for investments, we are referring not only to these guarantees, which are rather usual, are traditional, as you see them in other countries, in the laws of other countries, but Cuba has other attractions as an investment area. Its geographical location, everything that has been done along the history of the revolution as to the training of people. Our population are well educated, and they are able of assimilating new technologies brought by the investors. We have political stability, we have safety, that's important for foreign investors, and also for Cubans living abroad. They will have the possibility to be closer to their country by investing. They will be contributing more to the development of the nation and of the places where they lived or were born or where their families lived or where their ancestors were born. So I think that for foreign investors in general and for Cubans living outside Cuba, there are great guarantees and opportunities under the law and other incentives and encouragements that might also make them decide to have or carry out foreign investment operations in Cuba. Thank you very much for your presentations and the answers to our questions. We will continue in our broadcast this afternoon. Now we will have a break, and around 1:45 we will watch a documentary on the efforts against the blockade. So we will resume the session in the afternoon.